It is, I guess, 7:02 now. Time to call the Wednesday, May 3rd, delayed by the election, Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission meeting to order. We could start by having staff confirm the presence of a quorum.
Ms. Berkman? Mr. Deck?
Here.
Mr. Horkay?
Here.
Mr. Johns?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher? Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
Ms. Boljaric?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher will be joining us shortly. She had a 6:30 commitment that was in Fishers, so she's probably in transit hustling her way here now, but Kristen will be not present. Item next, there's no changes to the agenda, is approval of the minutes of our April 18th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to accept these minutes into the record?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Cindy Spoljarek and seconded by Victor McCarty. Everybody's present right now, so we can do a voice vote on this. Everybody in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Minutes are accepted. If staff would please review the rules and procedures for tonight's meeting, which include both items of business and public hearings.
Yes, for the public hearing items, the meeting will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition. The petitioner will then be given 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission. The president will open a public hearing. Individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. Those representing a group will be given 5. For efficiency purposes, we ask that all members representing a group come up to speak first. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments, and the Plan Commission will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. For our non-public hearing items, the department will summarize the petition and highlight any changes or modifications since the item was last before the Plan Commission. The department will also describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. And the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present any changes, and the Plan Commission will act upon the petition. For our general rules of conduct, we ask that you please not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices, and again, if you must answer them, please quietly exit the room. If you're attending in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition scheduled for a public hearing, then please come up when the item is called and sign in on this sign-in sheet for your item. And please ensure that when you come up to the podium, the mic is on as indicated by a green light on the microphone. During your comments, please state your name and address into the microphone for the record, and we ask that you not repeat previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed, and you will be advised when there's approximately 30 seconds remaining. If you are not attending in person and wish to comment on a petition, you can email planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded to Plan Commission members and the petitioner. We'd also like to remind everyone to please speak directly into the microphone, and also please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 items on our consent agenda this evening. Determined by staff to be ready for prime time. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second that.
We have a motion by Victor McCarty and a second by Andre Maui. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Consent agenda is approved. We move on to items of business, first of which is Grand Millennium Center PUD Amendment 2, petition number 2108-PUD-21. Staff can do their introduction, and then the petitioner will provide any comments if they are so inclined.
Good evening. For the record, Lauren Gillingham, Department of Community Development. The item before you tonight is the recommendation, or request for recommendation, for the Grand Millennium Center PUD Amendment 2. This is the culmination of the workshop meeting we had 2 weeks ago. As you can see on the map, it's bound by 31 to the west, Union Street to the east, with kind of Westfield Boulevard going through the site. yeah, I don't really have any specific points. Happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also here.
All right, thank you. Does the petitioner's team have any presentation to make? None? Okay. Sure. Just want to give you the opportunity. So, are there any questions for staff or the petitioner from the Plan Commission membership? I hear crickets.
You know, I do have one, I do have one question.
Okay, go.
And first of all, I'd like to compliment Edge Rock on doing a fantastic job of meeting with this body and making the changes. I think I'm extremely excited about this project. Well, the only question I have is under the amenity schedule. We talk about outdoor public spaces, including but not limited to plazas and courtyards and gardens. This is really like the first time I think that we've done a project like this in Westfield. It's extremely exciting. Do we or should we think about specifying a certain percentage of the area to be included in these outdoor spaces? Not having done them before, I don't know if there's any guidelines that you might have for us, Bruce.
Mr. Dalton, I don't believe your microphone is on.
Now is it on? Sorry about that. I don't know about a percentage. I think it's kind of hard to gauge that, but I think with the commitment for the common area along the drain, that long linear area, I think we'll have one really nice one there. And then since we're going multi-use, I think both the front and back of the buildings will have, very, fluid common areas, walkability, sittability, and so percentage I think would be tough right now based on the 18 acres. But I think that's our goal, is to have that common area, to give it the flavor we want.
Okay, I'm good with that. It's just being a new type
Well,
of project.
we should have a detailed development plan to you guys before the end of the year, so you get another chance to dial it in there.
Cool.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner, or staff has a comment?
Sorry, just to follow up on that, the multifamily portion is governed by the open space requirements of the multifamily zone, per the UDO. Nothing in the PUD would supersede that. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what that percentage is, but there are, baked-in requirements.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions or comments for staff or the petitioner, this is here for a recommendation to council. Do we have a commissioner who would like to offer a recommendation motion?
I'll make a motion to forward a positive recommendation for 2108 PUD 21 to the city council.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Matthew Deck and a second by Mike Johns. Will staff please, just say to send a favorable recommendation, will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on, our next item of business is an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance to address new floodplain language. And that is got a petition number that's hidden by a staple, but it's ZOA 03 for whatever year it was, 2209. Staff has any, or council has any remarks to make, entertain those now.
Yes, thank you and good evening. Pam Howard with Community Development Department. Before you this evening, we have an amendment to the Floodplain Administrator and Floodplain Overlay District Articles of the Unified Development Ordinance. This would completely replace and supersede these two articles in their entirety to match DNR's new model ordinance. Some of the specific changes are further outlined in the staff report. Public hearing for this item was held at your September 6th meeting, and it is now eligible for your recommendation. I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff regarding this amendment? It's fairly straightforward. It's something that the state has already created in a model ordinance, and communities are expected to adopt it. So this is when we're trying to do that.
Just so we all know, do you know the major changes from the past update?
Yes, so let me pull up the staff report. You mean from the old ordinance?
Yeah.
Or, okay, not from the meeting, last meeting? Okay.
No, no.
Yeah. So yeah, so the biggest changes include in Article 3.5, which is the floodplain administrator, more specifically outlining the duties and responsibilities of that office. Also allowing someone outside the department to be designated as a floodplain administrator. That is a change that we made in the ordinance. It previously stated the director or designated staff of the department, and now it's stating director or their designee. So that could be someone either outside of the department or potentially outside of the city if they wanted to hire a private contractor. Some changes to the actual floodplain overlay district include incorporating all of the model's definitions into the definitions section of Article 5.5. Previously, we had some definitions in the UDO and others in the overlay. So we've incorporated all of DNR's definitions into the overlay. So what that means right now is that there are a couple definitions that are duplicated in the UDO, but in the overlay, the ones in that chapter supersede, and that is stated. And at a later date, some of those, if deemed unnecessary in the definitions chapter of the UDO, could be removed or altered to meet general standards a little bit better instead of being as floodplain specific as they may be now. Another change is requiring DNR's best available floodplain layer to be used when determining floodplain lines. This was already a best practice that DNR wanted, but now it is a requirement of the ordinance. It does also add the requirements for process and permitting into the floodplain chapter instead of just having them in the improvement location permit chapter. Again, some of those are a little bit duplicated, but it just has a little bit more detail for any permit related to a floodplain. And then we also outline the map maintenance activities that the city is responsible for completing. Again, we were already responsible for these. It's just now outlined in the ordinance. And I did get confirmation from DNR that with these items, the requirements can be passed on to the developer. So certain things say that if changes are made, we have to amend the maps. It's been our practice, if it's because of a development, that the developer does that process. We just have to be the ones listed on the notice that's sent, but they can hire their engineer to do all the work.
All right, very helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Let the record show that Dr. Kelleher arrived and joined the meeting at 7:12. If there are no other questions or comments regarding the floodplain ordinance, this also is in front of us for for a recommendation to council. Is there a commissioner who would like to propose that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 22-09-ZOAOA3 to the city council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion from Cindy Spoljarek and a second by the recently arrived Dr. Kelleher. To send a favorable recommendation, if staff would please call the roll.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spiljerik?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on, we have 3 items for public hearings, first of which is Maple Knoll PUD amendment, zoning petition 2305 PUD-04 regarding language for the fire station's sign, new station that is in that district. Staff can go ahead and present, please.
Good evening, President, members of the Commission. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. This item is located south of 171st Street and east of Ditch Road on approximately 4.7 acres. The item before you tonight is an amendment to the Maple Knoll PUD District, modifying the sign standards. The fire station is proposing signs that does not meet the Maple Knoll PUD standards. So this amendment is to default to the city's sign standards, which would allow the proposed signage. This item is up for a public hearing tonight. It has been properly noticed and advertised. Staff has not received any public comments. And if after the public hearing, the Plan Commission is satisfied with this proposal, staff recommends waiving the workshop meeting and sending a recommendation to the City Council. I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing first at, was it 7:16 PM? Do we have anybody signed up to make any comments on this? And as a quick reminder, to anybody that might be attending virtually, if you have any comments you'd like to send to us electronically, please address them to planners@westfield.in.gov, and note that it's for the fire station sign. I don't see a thundering herd coming up. Did not anticipate one, but we'll hold for just a little bit to see if there are any folks attending virtually that are compelled to make a comment. I so love these parts of these meetings. Get to ponder other things. It is 7:18, almost 19, close to a couple of minutes. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And first up, if there are any commissioner questions or comments for staff. And if not, is there somebody who would be interested in making a motion that we go ahead and waive the requirement for a workshop meeting?
I will make a motion that we waive the requirement for a workshop meeting. What? Oh, you can't hear me. I'll make a motion that we waive the requirement for the workshop meeting for 2305-PUD-04, Maple Knoll PUD amendment.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Dr. Keller, seconded by Matt Deck, to waive the requirement for a workshop meeting. Staff, please call the roll.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spiljerik?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
That being the case, thank you. Is there a motion for a recommendation?
And I'll make a motion for 2305 PUD-04 Maple Knoll PUD amendment for the fire station. Positive recommendation to council.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Victor Carty, seconded by Dave Schmitz, to send a favorable recommendation. Will staff please call the roll for this motion?
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spiljerik?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on, item next in our public hearings, Wheeler Landing PUD amendment for Wheelhouse Phase 2, petition 2305-PUD-05. Proceed with
evening.
the staff report, please.
President, members of the commission, for the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. This item is located generally at the southeast corner of Virginia Rose Avenue and Grand Park Boulevard on approximately 5.5 acres. This is Phase 2 of the Wheelhouse Apartments project, Phase 1 being located directly east of this proposal. The item before you tonight is an amendment to the Wheeler Landing PUD district modifying the landscape standards. The landscape standards being modified include lot landscaping, external street frontage landscaping in regards to the mounding, and parking island standards. This item is up for a public hearing tonight, has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has not received any public comments. Representatives of this project are present tonight and plan on making a brief presentation. They are available for questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this item at 7:21. Once again, anybody attending virtually, if you are wanting to make a comment, please email us timely at planners@westfield.in.gov. Is there anybody in the room that is inclined to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll wait for a couple of minutes just in case there is a virtual attendee that would like to comment. It's 7:23 and a half. In the absence of any emails, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Are there any questions or comments for staff or petitioner?
I have a couple of questions, I think. As I understand it, I talked to Caleb today, and the decrease in the landscaping amount on this side, on the west parcel here, is actually less than was asked for on the east side. Is that correct?
Andy worked, I'm representing the developer, ladies professional of the law firm Church Hill and Antrim at the offices at 116 North Union Street. To answer your question, yes, we're only asking for, we'll be meeting 77% of the tree planting requirements on this phase 2.
Okay, so it's less than you did on the east side. Another question, on the island, I was the one who talked to Caleb today and said we need some kind of a number. It just said it can be less than 125 square feet, and I thought, but there needs to be a lower number. And I believe, what was it changed to, 25? Or, I don't have it in front of me, of course.
55. I had to look
55, okay, good, thank you.
We were in agreement with that.
And then my question is, what are considered, where are these on the drawing? What are the landscape, the parking, are they strips, are they circles? I mean, how do we define that so that I understand what we're allowing a decrease in?
Pretty much anything within the parking lot that has circles in it, I guess, would be a good way to quickly summarize it.
Okay, so it's not the long horizontal line then?
Well, that would be part of it.
That would be part of it?
Yeah, that would be part of an island, and then the islands can be individual end pieces. Like this right here would be an island by itself, this right here, and then this would technically count as 4 islands because of the way it's landscaped.
Okay, so those horizontal lines are considered part of the island?
They can be if they're connected, but typically when looking at an island, we are looking for that bump out with 1 tree and 4 shrubs for it to count.
Something that would be more alongside of a car, not the front or back of a car,
Correct.
depending upon how you
Yeah,
park.
but we do have a few other projects where they've done this as well.
Okay. I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm just asking questions. And on the horizontal one that we're looking at, there are circles. Are those trees, since I can't pull this up myself, or are they bushes?
Those are trees.
Those are trees? Okay. So here's my question. Is that wide enough to support a tree? Because I know they have to have water at their drip line and things like that to support their life. And so that's my concern. Is that enough?
I'm looking back at our landscape architects, and I believe they're shaking their head yes.
I suppose it depends on the species of the tree and how big it gets, but is that enough room for a tree to survive?
It does, yeah. So
If you
Brandon
would-
Schrag with
If you
Kimley
could
Horn.
introduce yourself, but name and address for the record, please.
Yep, definitely. Brandon Schrag, landscape architect with Kimley Horn. We have offices at
250 East 96th Street in Indianapolis.
Thank you.
Yes, so that's about 10 feet in width. And yes, it does matter the species, but we've carefully chosen the species to fit into that particular space. 10 feet's really good. That's something that we try to hit. You can do that in probably as low as 6 feet in width.
Okay, so is there anything in the ordinance, or do we need to put anything in the ordinance that those need to be 10 feet in width, or are we comfortable that that's okay? I just don't know, because I know that that's your intent, but again, an ordinance is written for whoever might end up doing it, and want to make sure that we have trees that will survive.
We've adopted, I mean, this landscape plan is an exhibit in the ordinance.
Okay, so the width of that is to scale?
I think we would be held.
Yeah, this is, if this is a measurable plan that's to scale, then yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other commissioner comments or questions for staff or the petitioner?
Well, from council, there was just a few items. One was just wanting to know more about the types of trees and being interested in those, and that was more of a holistic kind of question, more for development in Westfield and if we're planting the right trees in terms of longevity and things. And the other one was a request for the difference in the trees that you're not planting, if those could be planted elsewhere within the city, on some kind of public property, perhaps. That was a request from Jake. And you sounded like you could be amenable to that.
Yes, to answer your second question, we have looked into that a little bit, and one idea we've got, maybe our preference would be along the west side of Grand Park Boulevard in the right-of-way there. That's a big retention pond right now. I think it's still titled to Wheeler Landing LLC, but it will eventually be transferred over to the city. So there won't be any development, any other physical development there. We thought having balanced land or street trees along that road might be a good idea.
And I don't want to hold this up. I mean, I think that change could be made if we're going to have that in the language by the time it comes to council, if everyone is amenable to that. I wouldn't want to make you put it in a certain position, just that you would agree to work with the city to plant those elsewhere.
Absolutely. This is, I do want to underscore, this is not a cost-saving measure by heart. We're really looking at this for sustainability reasons.
Right.
So yes, we're amenable with that.
That sounds acceptable to me
Yeah,
anyway.
if that is a desire, since the trees will be planted off-site, we would prefer them not to be in the PUD ordinance, but it could be done in a separate set of zoning commitments, or voluntary commitments like we've seen in some other instances.
And we can work with staff on drafting that. We did, I want to add, we did check with John Nail about that possibility, and he is okay with that particular location anyway.
I think that'd be great.
It's been a while since this PUD was approved, and your question and response to that prompted a question for me that I didn't recall. You indicated that area where the trees are proposed perhaps to land will eventually be conveyed to the city. I didn't recall that. Is that accurate? Is that something we have anticipated and are prepared for? Did I
I'm not aware of
misunderstand
that.
you?
That would be a question for Public Works, for engineering, unless Caleb knows. No.
It's that pond there that we're talking about?
Yeah, that's right where the cursor is.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anything about that, so it's not,
Is
it's
that
not in my
something-
wheelhouse here.
Yeah. Is that something that was conceived in the PUD, that eventually would become city property?
That was told to me by the developer of Wheeler Landing, so I don't recall the history of that.
Okay.
Sure, to be honest, historic.
Do we have some knowledgeable input coming?
Yes.
Okay. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Alan Vetterhagic, civil engineer at Kimberly Horn, located 250 East 96th Street. The Grand Park Boulevard right-of-way will be dedicated to the city, and we had correspondence with John Nail, Director of Public Works, and as long as we meet requirements for planting trees in a right-of-way, he's receptive to that. To plant the trees in the right-of-way pretty much along the west side of Grand Park Boulevard. We can prepare exhibits for next time for the city council meeting to show how these trees will be planted in a manner that meets requirements for the public works.
All right, and that's a little different than what I thought I heard, and still probably material for Public Works to weigh in on, because I was thinking we were talking about the pond itself as opposed to Grand Park Boulevard's right
Pond
of way.
itself will be still dedicated to the city, yes,
The pond itself as well, not just the Grand Park Boulevard right of way?
correct.
Okay, I think,
That's my understanding.
not sure what we need to do about that tonight, probably.
Well, I think that's
Just
something left
make sure that-
between this meeting and when it goes to the
Yeah.
council for the staff and council
Yeah,
and the
we can
petitioner to
get some
work out.
sort of documentation from engineering that states that.
Okay, and if that's acceptable to them, the commitment that Kevin Todd has suggested probably is the way to do it. If they're not actually interested in that, then we have a little more that needs to be thought through somehow or other.
I have one other question. We've talked about this before. We have an ordinance that requires a certain number of trees and shrubs based on a dwelling unit in a multifamily. And we kind of had talked about this may have been more due to when we had a single unit next to another single unit and not multi-stories. And that if we do multi-stories, it seems reasonable to require landscaping based on the number of ground level units. And how close does this come to meeting that? Or is that, do we have any idea?
Ground level or the average of each.
Or the average
level,
of the
because there may
first
be-
floor levels, yes.
There may be fewer units because of other
It's
things
just
that
going
need to be
to
on the
come
ground
before us,
floor.
I'm sure, again in the future, and it'd be nice for us to have some discussion, maybe not tonight, but to get an idea of,
This would exceed that.
okay, great,
Perfect.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? It was not mentioned during the staff report, and I didn't bring it up earlier. This is something that if we are satisfied, we can go ahead and waive the requirement for a workshop meeting and make a recommendation tonight if we are so inclined. Do you have further?
We would appreciate that, yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
I would make a motion to waive the workshop meeting for 2305-PUD-05.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion for Dr. Kelleher, second by Councilor Spoljarek, to waive the workshop meeting requirement. If staff will please call the roll.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes,
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spoljarek?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. That being the case, then, we are ready for a recommendation motion for council.
I'll make a motion that we send a favorable recommendation to the city council for 2305 PUD 05, the Wheeler Landing PUD amendment.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Andre Maury, seconded by Matt Deck. Will staff please call the roll?
Dr. Kelleher?
yes,
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spoljarek?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Moving on, we have one more public hearing on the Trail PUD Amendment 4, petition 2305-PUD-06. Staff report, please.
Thank you, President. For the record, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you is an amendment proposal to the Trails PUD District. The subject real estate is located south of 175th Street, east of Oak Ridge Road, and north of the Midland Trace Trail on approximately 11.72 acres. The proposal outlines an increase to the maximum number of dwelling units on site to a total of 375 units. In correspondence with the approval of the original Trails PUD, Ordinance 16-26, 300 dwelling units are currently permitted to be developed. In other words, this amendment is requesting to increase the permitted number of dwelling units on site from 300 to 375 units. This item is here for a public hearing tonight, It has been properly noticed and advertised, and staff has received no public comments. Birch Dalton, the petitioner, is here tonight to provide additional details of the proposal. He is available for questions, as am I, if there are any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dalton, do you have some remarks that you would like to make? Leave the cash on the floor. I'll pick it up after the meeting.
Two exciting things. I don't have a pointer, but if you look at the amenity section down here lower right in the yellow, we all know that Grindstone on the Monon has been quite successful across the Monon. I've had a good relationship with both Perry and Blake Fogelsong, the family that owns it. And so we're very excited to announce that they are the leading candidate to both be the owner-operator of the restaurant and the upstairs bar. And they recently opened one called The Fountain down on Mass Ave, which is a higher-end kind of steak, seafood place. And they would be bringing that duplication here. So that commercial amenity, we feel is outstanding to have two restaurants, you know, good same management, plus the parking, you know, that they have excess of on the Monon there helps. And then the dog park, which is really a public trailhead, is another great amenity. If you look at the size and you know, the retention pond that'll be there with it. So we're pretty excited about having the Fogelsongs interested in operating it. Other than that, we cleaned up a little language in the ordinance, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Thank you. This item does require a public hearing. So first we will open a public hearing at 7:39 p.m. Final reminder to potential virtual attendees. If you have comments, please quickly email them to planners@westfield.in.gov. Doesn't appear that there's anybody in the room to make a live comment. We'll wait a couple of minutes for the opportunity to have a emailed comment. You know, credit to Matt Deck. I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't take the time to pull it up. I was watching the clock instead. Probably exactly 1 minute, because isn't that the time they have? Yeah. All right, we are seconds away from 7:41 p.m. Is there, I assume, no emails? Nope, all right. Public hearing is closed at 7:41 p.m. Are there any questions or comments for staff or the petitioner?
I have some questions and for both Birch and I think staff. I talked to Ryan earlier today. I'm not familiar with all the amendments that have been made, you know, since the first PUD. In the original PUD, the whole section A here was multifamily. And as I understand, a later amendment then added some GB to that. Is that correct?
Right, so.
If you come to the microphone, please.
Oh, sorry.
Or take the microphone to you, Birch, whichever you prefer.
So phase 1 and phase 2 if you look at phase one, we call that lot 4, and phase 2 is lot 5. Originally, the entire acreage was 300 kind of garden-style type units.
Right.
Like 7 or 8 buildings. And as we started that process, the city folks at the time, which you were one of them, I imagine, wanted a more urban-style type of look there. So we came back and come up with the 300 units that couldn't fit on phase 1, and we were going GB on phase 2. So now what we're asking to do is to spread the 375 over both lots, which we're asking for 375, but realistically, by the time we do the amenities, it'll probably fall off of that number, but we just didn't want to come back. But to answer your question, it went from garden-style apartments to urban style.
Right, and added GB.
And added
And added some
GB.
GB, okay. And I know that there are a certain number of required amenities, and it appears those all meet that. I did talk to Brian today about that.
So if, who has the pointer? Yeah, circle that whole area on phase 1, all through, over here, yeah. So we have the outdoor pool, clubhouse, which is both inside, outside.
Right.
We have every amenity that was in the PUD we asked for, plus we're expanding the dog park to a lot larger size and creating public parking there for the Monon.
Right. No,
As
that's a
we've-
good thing.
Yeah.
It does have all the original.
Well, we feel that's the public amenity for everybody, not just the apartments.
Okay.
We want people to park there, walk their dogs, and then enjoy the bar.
And the area around the dog park that's all still gray, what is that going to be? And why is it gray? Does that mean anything?
Well, so if you recall, the Anna Kendall Drain, we both moved it, we widened it, and we changed top of bank. So it'll be landscape per Department of Natural Resources requirements. So it'll be a big grassy area. That whole section will remain grass and,
Okay.
Shrubbery and trees.
Right.
So we got a lot of green space there.
Right.
Because still got flood
Yeah.
fringe up there.
Okay. I didn't know if it was something to be developed later or if it
No,
was going to
no,
be
no.
permanent. Okay.
It just looks that way because we just didn't finish it yet.
Okay.
And that pond will be bigger.
So gray is more to distinguish that it's actually in a different parcel and a different
Right,
use, but it
yeah.
still looked like the green part to the southeast.
Okay. And another thing, question, Birch, in your description, your narrative on this, you said there was going to be first floor retail in this section 5
Well, it'd be phase 2. And that,
or phase 2?
yeah, I guess the first floor retail is probably going to be limited to the first floor restaurant and maybe a shop that they have for some souvenirs or kind of the new look for these high-end restaurants is that they have their own liquor, their own shirts and stuff like that. But the retail description's probably not as accurate as it could be because I think the big amenity, we're going to build a 6,000 square foot restaurant there.
Right. So it doesn't mean you're going to have first floor retail under all of these other?
No,
Okay.
no, we
'Cause
won't
that's what
have-
it sounded like.
Yeah, I
I wanted to
apologize.
clarify that.
We can clarify that here tonight. I mean, it's gonna be limited to that area because we're having parking underneath the units on both sides. So there'll be podium-style parking.
Okay. And is that something, and this is a question for staff, if we're going to have more units and we don't have enough surface parking, is it going to be required? Do they need that first floor parking to meet the requirement? That's something you probably can't answer tonight, but if we're considering more units, it means more parking. And I don't know where all that's going to go, and that's a question for staff and for Birch.
Yes, they would have to meet whatever the parking minimum is for this project. I'm not sure if that has been amended in a previous ordinance or if it follows our default in the UDO of 2 per dwelling unit. So we can look into that.
Yeah, we'll go back to the site plan there. You can see the number of spaces we got kind of roughed in. So you see surface parking, 141. You got parking on this side for 79 cars underneath, and we didn't label that side, but that'll be probably a little over 120 on the larger side of the wing. So you're looking at close to 350 spaces there.
Okay.
And if we only have, let's say, 150 units max there, you know, you gotta have at least 100+ cars for the restaurant, right? And that's why it was so nice to get the Fogelson excited about it. Because if you look at their parking next to us in Monon, I mean, they have so much empty capacity when they're full inside. Now people can park there and come over, and they won't be so, I don't know if you ever seen the signs there, but they don't park here and get on the Monon. So those will go away. You know, so I think they're excited about coming across the trail.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner questions or comments?
Just an observational comment that as we're talking and looking at it, this reminds me of a scaled-down version of Ironworks on 82nd Street. Would that be somewhat accurate then?
Well, inspiration we gave staff, and I don't know if it got to you, was the Ironworks.
Okay. No, I didn't see it. Yeah.
I don't know how many units Ironworks has. I know it's a lot more. But the inspiration for Ruth Chris, how it fits in that kind of at the V of it, is one thing. But, you know, I wanted to add the second floor outside seating area facing the trails. That way you have a covered outside area underneath and then the inside restaurant. So we have more seasonal use of it.
Yeah. No, great idea. Thank you.
Birch, how close are you to starting this project, if it's approved?
Well, I'd say we're closer to closing on it than we have been. Obviously, it's been involved in a 3-year lawsuit, and this, the proceeds of the sale of this kind of settles that up. So I would say design would happen this year, breaking ground. I mean, Holiday's still willing to push forward on it, you know, even at a little higher price on the dirt and interest rates. So I'd say design would get done this year, groundbreaking next year. And, you know, I'm gonna recommend that we start on phase 2 first. That way we get the amenity in early. So you're probably looking 2025 before the restaurant would open.
Okay, all right. Which just I guess one other thing, you know, we look at the total number of apartments that we've got approved in Westfield.
Right.
And, you know, I've been pretty outspoken on the council, and I think a lot of councilors have, that we don't want to see any more apartments. Okay. That said, I'm super excited about this project. I think we need to look at each project on an individual basis. This has been sitting here for 7 years now, since 2016.
I know, it's gonna burn a hole in my pocket.
And you and I spoke about this first in January of 2020.
Yeah.
When the lawsuit was kicking in.
Yeah.
So I've got the vision with you. I think that this is close to our downtown area. This is more, it's developed more over the last 7 years into more of a cityscape, if you will. And I think we need these residences downtown. We need them to help bring more restaurants and retail to our downtown area. So I think it's a great project, and I'd like to see you move forward as quickly as possible.
Well, I can assure you after this one, I have no apartment plans in any other projects.
Thank you.
I have one more question, Birch. You have on the west side, I guess it's phase 4 or phase 1, the clubhouse and all the amenities. And in phase 2, you're going to have more apartments. Is there a way to get the people in phase 2 to phase 1 without going all the way out to the Monon and going around? Had you thought about a connection across there?
Yeah, well, there's 3 potential ones. The coolest one is always the hardest one. The walking bridge over a county-regulated drain. So obviously, we're going to go after that because it's a cool amenity right in the middle. But if you drop off the yellow, you can enter the Midland and walk right over to all those amenities. We're going to have 2 ingress and egress off the Midland Trail. You know, we want to make it where people want to come to visit friends there, make it easy, bike racks, dog area. So I get your point, and I'd love to have it, and I'd ask for you to support us when we go to Kent Ward. We'd love to have a walking bridge over that drain. But I think if you remember the problems we had at Grand Millennium putting in that road bridge, I mean, they,
Well,
it's
in lieu of that, as you say, some kind of access off the Monon,
the Midland.
or the
prob-
Midland, up
yeah.
into that, yes.
And then the Monon, we already have the trail along the south side of 175th Street. So, but again, you got to get over the drain, so that's problematic.
Right,
So, the Midland's kind of our key access point.
right. Okay.
That kind of leads to a question I have. We don't have a schedule of what amenities need to be done when with this project. And something like if Phase 2 develops and something happens and Phase 1 never happens, the amenity center will not happen.
Well, to that end, then we'll start Phase 1. And they'll probably do it concurrently. I can't speak for the construction schedule, but obviously you can't sell high-end, high-priced apartments without the amenities. So they'll either go concurrently or we'll do Phase 1 first.
I'd kind of like to see this laid out where we know what's coming when with the project, so we're not waiting to the end and the dog park never got built. Or, the amenity center is missing, or, you know what I mean, something like that. I
Yeah.
think we need some kind of schedule.
Well, I think with the project agreement we're working on with the city, that dog park's the first thing to get done. It would, so after we get through the PUD process, we're gonna sit down with the city and discuss how we do the dog park and, and so forth.
Well, and these other amenities too. I mean, having potentially, over 100 units, if not more, in Phase 2, and with the potential of them not having further amenities that are in Phase 1, that's one of my big concerns.
Well, we'll just have to do Phase 1 first, if that leaves the 8 to concern.
So for staff, when a project like this comes forward, if it's a residential project, there's a trigger as to when the amenities have to be put in, isn't it? After a certain number of,
Yeah, it's 50%, and that standard applies to all residential, so it would presumably apply to multifamily as well. So with something like this, where you have a single building as opposed to several smaller buildings, I think to get the Phase 1 building permit, they would have to be submitting a permit for the amenities if they're separate buildings for us to be able to issue it, because that would get them to 50%.
so you have a trigger point then that it's not likely to happen that one would get built without the other. And if it did, then the other wouldn't even be permitted until the
Yeah.
amenities were put in.
Any other commissioner questions or comments for staff or the petitioner?
We had a counselor that had a concern about the need for adding these and financially what that means, and potential for the future in terms of decreasing rents. Would that be necessary? Because you're kind of flooding the market. And I don't know if you want to speak more to that. You were at the council meeting, so.
Well, Mr. Patton and I have discussed that, obviously, at the first council meeting, and I'm happy to address. I mean, nobody's crystal ball is clearer than Joe Biden's, of course, but, this is going to be a very expensive project, and so we don't anticipate having that problem. We want the increase in the unit count to account for 2 5-story buildings. I mean, nobody else is doing those in town. We're doing podium style, and so the economies of scale, you're probably pushing closer to 55 million on this, and so the unit count is required. But, the future of decrease in rents, it will be the garden styles that go down first, because the people that live here are willing to pay the higher per square foot rent than they are in the garden styles. It's different clientele. So, I mean, we can discuss that again at council, but I think our position is that we're not underwriting this to decrease rents in the future.
I just wanted to share that comment.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it.
All right. Any other commissioner questions, comments for staff or the petitioner? We've had a little more discussion than I was thinking we were going to have. At first, I thought this might be a possibility that we could maybe forego the workshop and make a recommendation tonight like the other two, but is there enough that needs to be further addressed that we need to look to the workshop and then make the recommendation? Comfort of commissioners and technically
Yeah, I
from
think
staff.
that's your comfort level. There's always the option to waive the workshop but not make a recommendation. If you think that would be the way to go with this, that would put them at the June meeting for a recommendation, whereas if they go to the workshop, they'd be going to workshop in June and recommendation would be July. So if you think there's a few changes but not enough to warrant a whole workshop discussion, that could be done. Or you can just follow the normal process.
Thoughts from APC membership?
I guess I would ask EPC members what their concerns are. We haven't defined, we've asked a lot of questions, but we haven't actually defined what changes or things we'd like to see. So maybe that's what we do first, to see if there's enough to warrant a workshop or not.
Yeah, still the words right on
Birch,
the
is this critical path? I mean, if we waive the workshop and act on it, is that going to help you along, or do you have enough other stuff you're working on that that's not going to speed you up anyway?
If they could come forward.
I think Holiday is on a fast track to get going to design and get it. I won't sign a purchase agreement with them until the PUD's done, because I'm not going to get tied up again. So it's kind of like chicken and the egg. I mean, if we could waive the workshop and get to a recommendation, great. But, I respect, the work we've done on them before, and kind of how we flushed a lot of things out on 191st Street and Grand Millennium. So, I prefer to waive it, but, I defer to, the group here today.
Just seems like, excuse me, the scope of this request is pretty narrow. I mean, I'm not sure, it's units. So either it's either we like it or we don't, and I don't know that a workshop is necessary to restate 75 units. Or
Probably need to also change the language to a restaurant instead of making too much of a reference to retail. If we're really going to have a restaurant, we want to make sure that that's all we have. But it does seem in a way fairly narrow, and the schedule is such that it almost seems like, well, there's plenty of time, but we really want this to happen, is what I gather from multiple sources. And I understand how long the timeframes can be, and if we can get holiday started sooner rather than later, that'd be wonderful. So let's.
Yeah, can we bring up what the amenities are and see in the PUD to see how close we are? And is a restaurant considered an amenity? That's.
I think the restaurant is considered retail, isn't it? Is that a separate?
Yeah, I didn't know what the list of amenities was.
But we have plenty of amenities here when we get to the section.
Yeah, I thought we did. I wanted to just check.
I'd kind of like to see it not labeled amenity because it's misleading.
Unless the restaurant is an amenity as listed in the PUD.
I didn't have it listed in there. There we are.
So I think you have most of those things. You have a fitness center, and you're going, I assume, going to have a fitness center in the clubhouse, a pool at the clubhouse, a business center in the clubhouse, a dog park. Bicycle storage units are certainly something that you could add, an electric car charging station.
Well, I think the electric car charging is gonna, if you don't do it in a new unit, you're wiping out a big percentage of the future.
Right.
Yeah, you're probably going to have a number of those in both buildings.
Yeah.
Is there anything beyond grilling station at a clubhouse that continues on the next sheet? Oh, guess not.
But go back to 11.2, that'll kind of help Ms. Kelleher. So you look at 11.2A, originally, they were concerned about having too many entry points. They didn't want to just lose the trees. We don't want to lose the trees either, because we're selling the fact that you can live in the trees. So, access to the Midland would come off of Lot 4 and also on Lot 5,
Great.
So, but you got to remember, at that intersection, there's that bridge there. You remember the bridge we put in? So it may be the Monon come around the corner, you know, when they get around the drain.
If the only, based upon the description of the amenities there, if the only change that I'm hearing that we have is really just on the exhibit map, changing the word amenity to restaurant, would we be able to, one, again, because I don't want to waste time, I've voiced that before, if one, we waive the workshop, and two, and please stop me if I'm wrong, this is where my mind's going, if we just say the one adjustment is changing amenity to restaurant, making that in the motion as a recommendation to council, would we be willing or wanting to do that as well tonight? I'm just floating that out there.
I agree with that. I mean, he's going to be putting in all the amenities, and if there's going to be a restaurant, which I think is important in this project, then I think we should label it as restaurant or whatever other name would satisfy Birch.
Yeah. We can stick with restaurant if that helps everybody down the road, because I think that's the key thing, to give us some pizzazz there compared to every other apartment building,
Right.
you know?
Way back when this was a beginning project, I talked to Chris Wilkes about that. I was thinking on top, not on a lower part, though.
It's going to be 2 floors.
But I meant like
With
on the
Chris's.
top floor, and maybe looking more to the north was what we were talking about, but
Well,
at least
I don't-
maybe the idea survived, even though it wasn't exactly the way I envisioned it. But are we sounding like we're getting comfortable with waiving a workshop? I get a thumbs up and a nod, and
I am comfortable doing that with a change of amenity to restaurant.
all right. Well, before we get to the complication in the motion for a recommendation, we'll go ahead and ask for a motion to waive the workshop. Is there one?
Make a motion to waive the workshop.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? From Andre? Okay, so we have a motion from Matt Deck, second by Andre Maui to waive the workshop requirement for this petition. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spillier?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes?
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, with the workshop waived, we are now ready for a motion for a recommendation to council that will include a change in designation for the amenity to be restaurant, not retail. Is there anything else that
sorry.
needs to be a part of that?
One clarification real quick, just to check before making motion.
Sure.
With the dog park, was that in the amenities list?
Yes.
It was? Okay, sorry, didn't see that.
It was, yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion for 2305 PUD-06, the Trail PUD Amendment 4, with the one change for the master plan map where the yellow box labeled amenity to be changed to restaurant.
Okay, I feel that's satisfactory. Is there a second for this motion?
Second.
Dave Schmitz? Okay, motion from Victor McCarty, second by Dave Schmitz. Favorable recommendation with one change. Staff, please call the roll.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spillier? Ms. Spillier?
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
We want to see bulldozers next week. All right, that completes the public hearings. Other agenda items are continued to a future meeting. Taking us down to reports and comments. Are there any reports or comments from Plan Commission members for the fellow Plan Commission members? Seeing none?
I've got a quick comment here.
Sure.
Just so I think everybody knows it, but at the most recent council meeting, the council passed a resolution with the idea of moving forward with a comprehensive plan update and also a thorough plan update. The resolution basically said that Westfield, we'd like to, under best practices, update those plans on a 5-year basis. And we indicated that we would be asking the community development and this body to start work this year on the comprehensive plan. And the work this year may only, in fact, come down to figuring out a policy or a timeline for doing the plan, but have enough information there so that we might include it in the budget process, which is coming up in 3 months. So we're kind of putting the community development department behind a little bit behind the 8 ball here, because we're asking them to try and put some numbers down on paper to figure out what that timeline is, what the process will be. But I just want to let everybody know that we've asked to do that. We'd like to include it in the budget for next year, so we're good to go.
I have a question, Mike. The original comprehensive plan had a lot of action items to be done in order to achieve what the comp plan said. For example, it talked about densities, and maybe we should write densities in. It talked about other ordinances that would be written in order to achieve some of the things in the comprehensive plan. And we really didn't do that on a large-scale basis. And I guess my question for staff is, you've been collecting over years and years now updates to the UDO and potential additions or deletions. Is updating the comprehensive plan is a part of that, looking at all of those things that we were supposed to then achieve after each of those sections, and maybe addressing those? Is that, or are we talking about having a whole bunch of more public hearings and actually updating the plan itself, or putting in place the policies that were meant to achieve some of those things? Big question.
Yeah, I don't know that we have an answer to that at this moment. I think that's going to be part of the exercise that we do moving forward to determine the scope of this comp plan evaluation. I would anticipate there being additional recommendations for modifications to the UDO that come out of that. Not to say that there aren't things that we can go ahead and keep working on now, but maybe some of the bigger ticket items, perhaps we now wait until we get further clarification from whatever this comp plan thing looks like. Okay. Things like certain architectural standards and things like that, some of the bigger things that we haven't yet done. I'd hate to do them now and then have to undo and redo in a year and a half.
Well, and is it, just to try to narrow the scope of this, and please correct me if this isn't what council wanted. I mean, to redo the whole thing is kind of a big, where do we start? You know, what do we do? And I know the last 3 comprehensive plans that I've been involved in, it was the Plan Commission who kind of directed that. Do we write down what areas of the comp plan we think we have issues with and which ones we think we should address? Should we all look at that and make comments? I mean, how do we pick how we start?
It's good. Those are good questions.
Or what areas are most urgent?
Yeah, that's frankly exactly what you just described is what we're doing as a staff right now. We're going through our current comp plan, and we just started this exercise since the council kind of made this initiative. So we don't have any answers, but we're working through that ourselves. If the Plan Commission wants to provide their input on that too, I think that's
Seems to me that right now we have absolutely nothing on our horizon here for the potential May workshop meeting.
Yeah.
So a little less than 2 weeks from now on Monday, whatever that is, week after next.
Yeah, that's a pretty quick
turnaround. That maybe is the material for that
to get a lot of meaningful input. That's a pretty quick turnaround. But I will say it's my, I guess, goal or hope or direction or whatever out of this is to be able to provide maybe a few options for the Plan Commission and Council to consider a scope of work, right? And that's we're at the very beginning of that right now.
And I guess, you know, again, being on 3 comprehensive plans where the Plan Commission was really much more heavily involved, and we all work with the comp plan every day in every petition that we hear. more so than maybe we used to, because now a lot of them are PUDs, which involve lots of different uses instead of a single use as we used to have. And for us to sit down and write individually what we might see as areas that might be updating, or at least something to discuss, you'd probably get 9 different answers up here, just like you'll probably get many different answers from staff. But all of that input, hopefully, if we can get all of that, and then 5 of them are the same, we know where we might want to go. So I would encourage the APC to kind of look at the comp plan, and you may not know the whole thing. There may be areas that are of special interest to you or that you're most familiar with. I think of Andre when it comes to some standards, and I rely on him for building standards and thing, and I think of other people, you know, who have certain interests. And if everybody could write down some ideas, we could have a workshop and just talk.
Yeah, no, Pam reminded me that we are currently anticipating working through the questions that Mayor Cook asked us to review at our May 15th workshop meeting. That will very likely take the majority of that session, I'm guessing. But yeah, I mean, I think to me, this all kind of dovetails a little bit together anyway. So I think that may be kind of a next step in the sequence, right?
So we'll anticipate a May 15th meeting to go over the big 3 questions and see where that segues perhaps into other things, because we are prompted now to think about this between now and the 15th.
That's right. I think that's what I would anticipate, kind of being the next several kind of working sessions for things that are not PUD related.
Sure.
I mean, doing the whole thing, is a beast. It's massive. And if individuals on the APC and staff and even the council have areas they think, hey, this is, I think, a hot spot, we can talk about it. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if there's enough consensus, then we at least have better direction on it.
I agree. I think that kind of direction and insight would be helpful, for sure.
All right. All that fell broadly under the bullet point of Plan Commission members' comments. Is there anything else from amongst us? Downtown update is next. I'm not sure there is much to update, and the person that would normally offer that is not present this evening. Taking us to council liaison, but if I'm not mistaken, there have been no meetings between our last meeting and now.
Correct.
So there probably won't be a council liaison update, or a Board of Zoning Appeals liaison update, or a plat committee liaison update. Taking us to news of the day from community development. Is there any breaking news we need to hear about?
Yes,
I suspect so.
as you know. This has been my last Plan Commission meeting. I am moving to Colorado at the end of the month. I've taken a job out there, so next Friday will be my last day of employment with the city.
No.
Don't let you leave, Pam.
You go. No. Sorry,
Unless you
Pam.
tell me where you're going to move in Colorado so I can come visit you.
Yes, the town of Firestone, which is
Okay.
north of Denver.
Thank you for everything that you've done, Pam. You've been
Yes.
wonderful to work with.
Thank you. And you will all get an invite tomorrow to a goodbye thing being held on Wednesday, next Wednesday, at West Fork Whiskey after work. So hopefully I will see some of you there.
All right.
We will miss you, Pam.
Thank
Not
you.
only as
Certainly
an
will.
excellent planner, but as a really nice person.
Well, thank you.
I hope all those people out in Colorado appreciate all the hard work we did over your 8.5 years to turn you
Yeah.
into what you are. Because it is excellent.
Thank you.
A lot of good work. Does that shoot community development's wad? I think that probably should say it all for tonight. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
From Councilor Spolcher, or Cindy Spolcher, second from Victor McCarty. Since we're all here, we can do a voice vote. Everybody in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed to adjourning? Shockingly, no. We are adjourned at 8:16.
Pam, I'm so happy for you, but I'm so sad.
Or downhill